Well, let's look at how voting might be different post-COVID-19 with award-winning futurist researcher and keynote speaker Nikolas Badminton, who joins us on Canada Now. And Nick, you'd think gone must be the days of people getting in close proximity of each other to vote, but there they are in South Korea holding an election, and they are using sanitizer and face masks, gloves, and temperature checks at polling stations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the highest turnout since the 2004 general election, right? 15.6 million people had voted by 5 p.m. on the day of the election, and that was much, much higher beyond that. And really, putting the safeguards in place where you do have COVID-19 waning and under control, it just means that the people feel safe enough, certainly to go out there and make their vote count. And I think that we're going to see that coming up in the next year or so in elections that are going to happen around the world, because I think that people are none too happy with the way that things have gone, or they really want to reward the governments that have looked after them.
Well, electronic balloting has slowly made its way into the voting process already for the past decade or so for those overseas in the military and disabled voters as well. What's been holding that back? Has there been a reluctance by the general public to adapt to technology? Has there been a reluctance on the part of, let's say, government officials to roll this out?
You know what? It's about standardization, having a process, having the manufacturers of the equipment to have certain safeguards in place. And the infrastructure to be secure, i.e. not hackable. And unfortunately, what we found in places, and I'm looking down to the US in particular, the big debate has been around, have these been secure? Do they ensure the integrity of the election versus, paper ballots? And it's an ongoing debate. And especially because they've got all the different states with all the different systems and ways of working, there's a lot of politicized debate around that. But, it should be easy, right, to have one supplier, one system in place that remains secure. So it's wrangling that's stopping it from being taken up mainstream.
Are we going to be voting on our cell phones anytime soon?
You know what? I was thinking about this quite a lot over the last sort of couple of weeks. And if we can have secure networks that we operate on and work with the telecommunications providers, if we can have an application or set of applications that work, cannot be gamed, maintain integrity, then I think we can make that work. I do think that if we can make it work along with biometrics, using, iris scanning or other elements to really ensure that we are the right people that are voting, then I think that we've got a chance of making that work.
All right, so I wanted to get to iris scanning as part of the voting system. Is that going to be our new voter ID?
We've been looking for the ultimate identification of who we are. Iris scanning has been used in Somaliland and other places around the world with great effect, and that's awesome. And it's used in a lot of very secure facilities around the world. So I think that would be really, really very interesting. But obviously, you have to build the database of people to ensure that you can make sure that they're the right people, that you can be identified in the system. And that's a much larger program. And then there's a lot of concerns around, surveillance, what's that data going to be used for and the such like.
Okay, but let's look at the positive, Nick, okay? The positives, plural. This eliminates the dummy vote. Voters cannot register in more than one place. Less manpower is needed. The voter's vote is marked and accounted for. If they could get that perfected, then, boy, a lot of positives to come out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're in the age of vote economics where, when you can wrangle and disprove certain batches of votes, then certain people can get into power by discarding a lot of the voters' sort of valid votes in the system by calling them invalid under certain sort of legal terms. So, it's a hotbed of discussion right now. I think that if we can calm down and we can really build integrity into these systems, we can build a secure central system that's not used by intelligence of people's biometric identification, and we could maybe use our devices and biometrics in some way, then I think that that's the absolute future we should be heading towards.
What about, because what we've grown accustomed to is, hey, such and such day is voting day. Are elections going to be spread out from a day to, say, a month?
You know what? It's really interesting. It's not about whether you vote on one day or over a period of time. I actually think that the frequency of voting and the accountability of, municipal governments, provincial governments, all the way out to federal governments is going to be held to task. So, ideas around liquid democracy and e-democracy and more accountability on an ongoing basis, I think that that's going to be the future of democracy, not necessarily having these cyclical, once every 4 year voting the person who's going to be in charge of the country. I think that the cycles are going to be a lot quicker, and the accountability is going to mean that the countries are going to hopefully be run a lot better than they are today.
What do you suspect the voting process is going to be like for the U.S. presidential election later this year?
I'm really hoping that we're going to see a lot more people voting. I think that's going to be one of the big things that I'm expecting to see. I do think that a lot of technology companies that are providing solutions are going to step up to the plate. I think we'll see that in the next 2 to 3 months, and that the discussions are really going to kick off by the summer of how people are going to securely and safely vote at these times. Will they put in processes like they've had in South Korea? Well, I certainly hope so. They're making sure that people weren't coming in with fevers, people wearing face masks and gloves, and everyone's safety from a medical perspective was ensured. So it's going to be interesting times, Jeff.
Well, if there is going to be more convenience with this upcoming election later on this year in the U.S., how would we ever go back? Like if there is more convenience put in place because of this outbreak, there really is no going back after that. Once new technology is introduced or something, if it's going to happen this soon, if there is more convenience that is introduced, I don't see us ever going back.
No, I don't think we'll want to go back because this bright new world has shown us the convenience of digitization. It's shown us the ability that we can all work in this way. We just need to make sure that the underlying systems have that integrity, that security, and the due process behind it, right? And then that has to integrate with, how democracy works in these countries. And if we can make that work, Jeff, we're never going to go back to paper voting.
I don't think so. I think you're absolutely right. Check out NikolasBadminton.com, futurist, researcher, keynote speaker, Nikolas Badminton. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk again next week.
Be safe, Jeff. Bye-bye.
All right. You too.